My wife. The stranger in the black suit told me, sliding a diamond ring across table 12 while 3 armed men entered the restaurant. Why? I asked. Because they have orders not to kill me in front of her. I looked around for the woman he meant. He closed my fingers over the ring. Tonight she is you. My name was Sofia Bell. I was a plus-size waitress at Casa Verona, a private Italian restaurant where politicians ate upstairs, and men without last names ate below. The stranger was Roman Valenti, though I did not know that until later. I knew only that he was bleeding beneath his cuff, and that the kitchen door had just been locked from outside, and that the tallest assassin was staring directly at us. I charge extra for marriage, I whispered. Roman rose, pulled me gently to my feet, and kissed my temple as if he had done it 1,000 times. Smile, amor. I hate you already. Convincing the 3 men approached. Every guest stopped speaking. The tallest assassin had a scar through one eyebrow and a silver wolf pinned inside his lapel. Roman placed one arm around my waist. I felt the hard shape of a pistol beneath his jacket. Valenti, the assassin said, we heard you were dining alone. My wife dislikes publicity. His gaze moved over my body and uniform. Disbelief flickered. Roman's hand tightened. A problem. Before the assassin answered, he saw the ring on my finger. His face changed. He dropped to one knee. Then he bowed his head to me. Forgive me, Donna Serafina, I said in Sicilian. I did not know the bloodline had returned. I understood the language because my grandmother had raised me in a house where English was used for bills and Sicilian for secrets. Understood it too. His surprise was real. Stand, I said, copying the tone my grandmother used when angry with priests. The assassin obeyed. Leave this restaurant, I continued. No blood. Beneath my table, he placed his fist over his heart and ordered the others outside. Roman waited until the door closed. Who are you? The woman you married 30 seconds ago. That ring belonged to my mother. Then your assassin has unusual family manners. The restaurant owner rushed over, pale and sweating. Don Valenti, the rear exit is clear. Don, that word explained the weapons. Silence. And why 3 killers respected the man beside me. Roman Valenti controlled the southern docks and the security companies protecting half the city. A rival council had placed a price on him after his father's death. He said, absolutely not. The man who bowed believes you are Serafina D'Amato's descendant. If he reports that, every family in Sicily will search for you. My grandmother's name was Serafina Bell. What was it before Bell? I knew the answer, but had never spoken it outside our apartment. D'Amato Roman looked at the ring. Then we did not fool him. The restaurant windows shattered. I ripped through the empty table where we had been standing. Roman pulled me behind the bar. The bowed assassin had left, but someone else wanted us dead. We escaped through the wine cellar into an alley where a black sedan waited. I refused to enter until another bullet struck the brick beside my head. This is the worst proposal I have ever received, I said, climbing inside. How many have there been? None. Are still losing. Romanesque driver took us to a fortified townhouse. Inside, portraits of severe Italian men watched servants move without sound. My advisor explained that Serafina D'Amato had once led a Sicilian network protecting villages from corrupt bosses. She vanished after refusing to surrender a ledger containing names of judges, bankers and family leaders. Her descendants were believed dead. Among old loyalists, her ring commanded protection. This is Romanus' mother's ring, I said. His mother descended from Serafina's younger sister, Isa replied. The direct heir receives the bow. Everyone looked at me. I wanted to return to Casa Verona, finish my shift, and complain about tips. Instead, I had become a symbol in a war I did not understand. Protection. If I continued, pretending to be his wife for 48 hours, long enough to negotiate safe passage with the bowed assassin faction. No, I said. Name your price. The answer is no. You think everything becomes consent after a number. His expression changed. What would make it consent? The truth, all of it. He dismissed the room and told me his father had been murdered by someone inside the Valenti council. The rival Morello family claimed responsibility, but Roman found payments linking the assassin contract to his uncle Enzo. I needed Roman dead before a council vote. If Serafina Ser publicly stood beside Roman, older Sicilian captains would refuse Enzo as authority, so I am not a wife, I said. Yes, and if I refuse, I still protect you. That answer made me believe him more than the expensive walls did. I agreed on 3 conditions: no touching without warning, and no decisions made in my name, and my grandmother's history belonged to me, not his counsel. Roman accepted. His tailor brought dresses designed for a much smaller woman. I refused to wear them. Housekeeper, Mrs. Conti, opened a locked wardrobe belonging to Roman's mother and found a black silk dress that fit my curves as if it had waited for me. She was a beautiful woman, Conti said. She also hated people who confused thinness with discipline. Roman saw me at the staircase and forgot the sentence he was speaking. Do not make it strange, I said. The dress belongs to you. Better. At the council dinner, men whispered when I entered. Some mocked the waitress wearing a family ring. Others bowed. Valenti smiled and asked whether Roman hired wide wives through restaurant staffing agencies. I looked at his untouched wine, only uncles through funeral homes. Roman coughed into his hand to hide a laugh. Our assassin, Gabriel Russo, attended as neutral witness. He asked me a question in an old dialect. What does the olive tree keep when fire takes the hill? My grandmother had used it as a bedtime riddle. I remember rain, I answered. Gabriel bowed again. Enzo's smile vanished. During dinner, a server placed almond cake before me. My grandmother had a severe almond allergy. Or did I? Roman removed the plate before I touched it. The kitchen was told. He said the server ran. Guards caught him, carrying a Morello coin and a key to Roman's study. I demanded immediate execution. As I noticed flour beneath the server's fingernails and burn marks on his wrist. He is a baker, not an assassin, I said. The young man admitted Enzo's guards kidnapped his sister and forced him to carry the key. Yes, the Morello coin had been planted to frame the rival family. Enzo ordered him silenced, when Roman refused and placed the siblings under protection. The council began to see which man behaved like a leader and which behaved like an owner. Roman showed me Serafina's surviving letters. One mentioned a ledger hidden where the bride serves the hungry and the wolf kneels without shame. I recognized the phrase. And mother ran a soup kitchen beneath St. Agnes Church. A stone wolf was carved beside the pantry. Stairs we went before dawn with Gabriel and Mrs. Conti behind the carving, and a metal box containing the ledger, photographs, and my grandmother's real marriage certificate. She had not fled Sicily in fear. She came to America to protect witnesses and built a network through restaurants. Our churches, laundries, and women nobody important noticed. The ledger included Enzo's father and several current judges. It also showed Gabriel Russo's father tried to expose them. The supposed Valenti-Morello feud had been manufactured to keep both families fighting while Enzo's network stole from their ports. On the church steps, gunmen attacked. Gabriel shielded me and returned fire while moving us inside. Enzo's men seized Mrs. Conti and demanded the ledger. I gave them the box. It was empty. I had hidden the pages inside sacks of donated flour because my grandmother's note said the bride serves the hungry. The soup kitchen volunteers moved the sacks through 3 exits before the gunmen understood. Women with shopping carts carried more power out of the church than all the armed men at the door. Council convened that afternoon. Enzo accused me of forging the ledger and Roman of inventing a wife to steal authority. She is not your blood, he told the captains. She waited tables yesterday, and more truth from those tables than you learned in this chair, Roman replied. Gabriel presented the original witness seals. Judges received copies. Morello representatives arrived with matching records from their father's archive. I pulled a gun. Every guard in the room hesitated, unsure whose order ruled. I stood. My grandmother's network fed your families when men like him used war to make you obedient. Who serves Enzo after seeing this ledger serves the theft, not tradition. Gabriel knelt. One captain followed, then another. They were not kneeling to my body, my dress, a magical bloodline. They were acknowledging the records Serafina died protecting. Enzo fired at me. Roman took the bullet across his shoulder and knocked me behind the council table. I disarmed Enzo. This time, I was the one holding Roman's bleeding shirt. "You have a terrible habit of getting shot near waitresses," I said. "Only my wife, temporary wife." Cruel woman. Enzo was arrested with the judges and port officials named in the ledger. Roman and the Morello family ended the false feud publicly. The council asked me to claim Serafina's seat. I refused. My grandmother did not protect ordinary people, so her granddaughter could become another person nobody questions. I turned St. Agnes Soup Kitchen into an independent community trust funded by recovered money, and workers, cleaners, drivers, and widows received legal aid. Roman offered to fund everything. I allowed one contribution under the same limit as every other donor. "You enjoy reducing my influence." "It keeps you attractive." "You think I am attractive?" I asked. "You to be my wife before knowing your name," you asked, "because assassins were entering. My timing was poor," I sighed. We stopped pretending after 48 hours, but he continued visiting the soup kitchen. He washed dishes badly, frightened volunteers accidentally, and learned that protection sometimes meant following someone else's rules. Months later, he returned to Casa Verona and sat at table 12. I was helping train new servers, not working the floor. He placed the same ring on the table. "Pretend again," I asked. He took a breath. "Choose for real." "Is that a proposal?" "It becomes one, only if you say yes." I made him wait through dessert. Then I accepted. At our wedding, Gabriel Russo approached in a black suit. Guests expected him to bow to the Mafia boss. Instead, he bowed to my grandmother's old recipe book displayed beside the ledger, then to the restaurant workers who had carried the evidence. Roman first called me his wife. An assassin bowed because he recognized my blood. The day I truly became his wife, no one bowed to a title. They stood beside us because we had ended the war that titles created. I thought choosing each other for real would end the part of our lives built on performance. Instead, our wedding made the old D'Amato name visible to people who had spent generations profiting from its disappearance. 3 days after the ceremony, a package arrived at St. Agnes containing 12 broken olive branches and a photograph of my grandmother standing beside a woman whose face had been cut away. It was one sentence in Old Sicilian. "The false bride wears the true woman's ring." Gabriel Russo recognized the phrase as a formal bloodline challenge, claimed. I was not Serafina's direct heir, and that the ledger had been manipulated to place me beside Roman. If the challenge succeeded, captains who bowed at the restaurant could withdraw their protection and reopen the fight. Enzo created it, Roman said. "Ignoring tradition works only after the people enforcing it agree," I replied. "Until then, someone may attack the soup kitchen to prove the threat is real." I refused to let St. Agnes become guarded territory. Children came for meals, immigrants came for legal help, and older women came because my grandmother had made the basement a place where no family name outranked hunger. Armed men at the door would destroy what we were protecting. We created a civilian safety plan instead. Volunteers learned exits. Deliveries were verified by people who knew the drivers. Cameras belonged to the church trust, not Roman. Gabriel stationed men a block away and complained that grandmothers kept identifying them despite ordinary clothes. "They stand like men waiting to shoot someone," and he said. "Tell them to hold grocery bags." The photograph led us to Serafina's years in Sicily. The cutaway woman was Caterina D'Amato, Serafina's younger cousin and Roman's maternal ancestor. Family stories claimed Caterina remained loyal while Serafina fled with the ledger. Letters revealed the opposite. Caterina helped Serafina escape, then stayed behind to misdirect the corrupt council. Roman, placed on my finger, belonged to Caterina, not Serafina. The assassin bowed because he recognized the family design, but the ring alone never proved my direct line. My grandmother's recipes, dialect, and witness records did. The challenger wanted everyone focused on jewelry because physical symbols are easier to steal than lived knowledge. A hearing was scheduled at the old Valenti Opera House. 12 families would attend. The challenger remained unnamed until the hearing, protected by ancient rules. Roman believed Enzo's surviving allies were behind it, suspected someone closer to the community. The black envelope paper carried flour dust and saffron. Only 3 St. Agnes volunteers worked both pantry and mail. One was Teresa D'Amato, my grandmother's, when I was oldest. Friend, when I confronted her, she did not deny sending it. "You married into the family Serafina spent her life limiting," she said. "You turned her network into a romance." Accusation hurt, because I had feared the same thing. Teresa believed Roman would use my name to command volunteers who never consented to Mafia authority. She had initiated the challenge not to steal the seat, thus public separation between the community trust and Roman's family. "You could have spoken to me," I said. "Would the new Donna Serafina have listened?" "The waitress would have." Asa looked ashamed, but the hearing was already in motion. Enzo's allies had learned of it and planned to use the challenge to seize both organizations. The unknown woman removed from the photograph had left descendants. One of them was Isabella Morello, daughter of the family Roman had falsely fought for years. Isabella had no interest in leadership, but possessed letters proving Caterina's descendants were intended guardians of Serafina's network if the direct line became compromised by marriage. Wedding had activated that clause. "Then the trust may belong under her protection," I told Roman. "You would give away your grandmother's legacy. It is not a necklace. It is work. If the rules protect the people, my pride does not outrank them." Roman's jaw tightened. He feared losing the alliance, but he did not pressure me. That restraint answered Teresa's concern better than any declaration. Opera House, Teresa revealed herself as challenger and presented Isabella's letters. Enza's former advisor, Father Lucian, interrupted with a third document, claiming both bloodlines forfeited authority by cooperating with criminal families. Opposed, placing St. Agnes under a council he controlled. The paper carried Serafina's seal. Everyone began arguing over authenticity. I smelled the document before touching it. Packs contained almond oil, used by modern conservators but unavailable when the letter was dated. The paper had been artificially aged with tea. "This is false," I said. Lucian laughed, as now authenticates archives. A waitress notices ingredients. Isabella examined the ink and found fluorescent pigment beneath ultraviolet light. Father Lucian ordered his guards to seize the ledger. Half the Opera House security turned their weapons toward us. The challenge had gathered every important witness into one room, exactly as Enzo's banquet once had. Roman moved in front of me, beside him. "No decisions in my name," I reminded him. He nodded. Teresa activated the Opera House, a volunteer alarm system installed by stage workers after a deadly fire decades earlier. Instead of ringing bells, it raised every fire curtain at once. Heavy barriers dropped between Lucian's guards, dividing them into small groups. Kitchen volunteers opened side exits. Seamstresses cut ropes controlling decorative screens. Musicians used instrument cases to block doors. Again, the community network defeated armed men through knowledge of ordinary work. Gabriel captured Lucian near the orchestra pit. Isabella protected the original letters. No guest died. At the resumed hearing, I did not claim Serafina's seat. Isabella did not claim it either. Of the hereditary authority, and replaced it with an elected board representing shelters, kitchens, legal clinics, and worker groups. Family descendants retained one advisory seat each, to command money or protection alone. Teresa became the first chair after volunteers elected her despite my lingering anger. "Trust does not require pretending you handled this well." I told her. "Will you still serve?" "Yes." Accountability also applies to friends. Roman publicly signed a statement renouncing any Valenti control over St. Agnes. Several captains called it surrender. Answered that an alliance freely chosen was stronger than a charity inherited through his wife. Our marriage survived its first real conflict, not because we agreed, but because he did not ask me to shrink my grandmother's work around his power. I continued managing the community trust and returned to Casa Verona once a week to train servers in identifying coercion and trafficking. The restaurant owner created an emergency code disguised as a dessert order. Last time a waitress used it, she helped a teenage girl escape a man posing as her employer. No assassin bowed, no mafia boss intervened. That quiet rescue meant the system worked without us, and faced his own reform. He opened port contracts, removed captains tied to extortion, and created direct reporting for drivers. One night, he returned to our apartment with blood on his cuff. I was remembering table 12. "Not mine," he said. "That is not sufficient." He had stopped a captain from beating a dock worker and taken the injured man to a clinic. "You could have sent guards," I said while cleaning the cut on his hand. "I was there. Being there does not require using your fist. He had one too. You are impossible. You married me twice. One marriage was under gunfire." And may be reviewed. He smiled and let me finish the bandage. The deeper test came when auditors discovered Roman's father had funded St. Agnes with money taken from businesses in the neighborhood. And my grandmother accepted some donations without knowing the source. Returning everything would close the kitchen. Keeping it without acknowledgement would repeat the secrecy we condemned. Held a public meeting. Shop owners described losses their families carried for decades. The trust created a restitution fund using Valenti assets, while the kitchen continued under independent grants. Transferred 2 properties to neighborhood cooperatives. "Your father is not alive to apologize," I told him. Afterward, "No, but his assets are alive to repair." That sentence became central to our life. But we could not build love by dividing history into innocent and guilty families. Every inheritance carried choices. The question was what we did once evidence reached our hands. Gabriel Russo eventually stopped bowing to me. The first time he greeted me with a simple hug, older men looked scandalized. "You asked for no titles," he said. "I am practicing." Bella became my closest collaborator. Together we traveled to Sicily to digitize letters held by women whose family work never entered official archives. Roman came but did not lead. Carried boxes, frightened archivists with his silence, and learned to make espresso for volunteers. In my grandmother's village, we found Serafina S.'s final recorded message on a damaged tape. Her voice was older than I remembered. "If my granddaughter hears this," she said, "tell her blood is only a road into responsibility. It is not a throne. Choose the people who stand beside you when the ring means nothing." I listened with Roman's hand near mine, not holding until I reached for it. The assassin's bow had once seemed like the moment my life changed. It was not. The bow only revealed a history. Life changed through every choice afterward. Refusing inherited authority, listening to Teresa's uncomfortable warning, letting community workers protect their own institutions. I'm a man who learned that standing beside me did not make my legacy his. On our first anniversary, Roman took me to Casa Verona after closing. Table 12 remained in the corner. I placed the original cheap wine glass beneath a small light and called it a historical artifact. "It was a terrible glass," I said. "You almost died beside it," Roman replied. Improve the stemware, he slid no ring across the table. Instead, he handed me the updated trust charter bearing hundreds of volunteer signatures. "No pretending," he said. "Our inherited wife, no borrowed authority. What are you asking dinner if the director is available?" I made him wait while I checked the kitchen. Then I sat years earlier. He chose a plus-size waitress because assassins entered a restaurant and he needed a disguise. He believed a ring could make us safe for one night. We learned that safety built on performance never lasts. It was the harder thing. A marriage where either person could refuse, a community where no bloodline controlled the door, and a love strong enough to survive when nobody bowed. For almost a year after our wedding, the city allowed us to believe the war had ended. Roman attended every meeting of the new council without sitting at the head of the table. I ran the restaurant with my sister and used the upstairs office to help families complete restitution claims. Men who once lowered their eyes when Roman entered now had to explain their budgets to widows, upkeepers, and 2 union representatives who were unimpressed by expensive suits. It was imperfect, loud, and honest. Then, on the first anniversary of the night, an assassin bowed to me. A white envelope appeared beneath our apartment door. There was no stamp, no fingerprint, and no name. Inside was a photograph of me serving coffee at the diner before I knew Roman. A red circle surrounded the face of an elderly customer sitting in the corner. On the back, someone had written in Sicilian, "Your wife was chosen before you chose her." Roman read the sentence twice, like every window. I recognized the customer as Mr. Bellini, a quiet widower who had ordered one boiled egg every Thursday and tipped with polished coins. He had disappeared. A week before, Roman asked me to pretend to be his wife. The restaurant records showed Bellini had paid cash for years. But one security camera had captured the ring. On his right hand, it bore the same broken crown that appeared on Serafina S.'s recovered recording. And Roman wanted to move me to the fortified house. I refused. If someone arranged our meeting, hiding me will not change. Why we returned to the old diner after midnight and opened the booth Bellini always requested. The seat was a narrow brass key and a strip of paper with 4 numbers. The key belonged to a private railway locker. Inside, we found no weapons, only a waiter's apron, a bundle of letters addressed to my late mother, and a cassette labeled for Sophia when she is ready to be more than a symbol. My hands shook so badly Roman inserted the tape. Bellini's voice filled the locker room, and he said his true name was Angelo D'Amato, Teresa's younger brother and the last keeper of a secret their family had buried for 30 years. My mother had worked as a bookkeeper for the D'Amato shipping company, but that Teresa planned to seize hereditary power by manufacturing a bloodline crisis. She copied the accounts and fled. Angelo protected her on the condition that she never told me. I watched from a distance because Teresa's people were still searching for the missing copies. The night Roman entered, my restaurant was not arranged by Angelo. It was arranged by Teresa. She had sent an assassin where Roman would be forced to claim a wife, believing he would choose a frightened woman she could later discredit. Angelo had quietly changed the server schedule, so I would be there instead. I did not choose your life, his recording said. I gave chance one honest witness. The final letter warned that Teresa had kept a second network outside the city, judges, customs officers, accountants whose loyalty did not depend on her freedom. Their emergency fund would activate if the elected council survived 1 year. The activation date was the following morning, and at 9, every account belonging to the community trust froze. At 10, police arrested 3 council members for laundering money through charities. At 11, a television station aired edited footage that made Roman appear to threaten voters. By noon, a crowd surrounded the council hall, convinced the reforms had been a disguise for another takeover. Teresa had designed the attack to turn transparency against us. Every document looked authentic because parts of it were authentic. SR's old signature appeared on transfer orders from the years when he still ruled by fear. He could not deny the past without lying. He could only prove the present had been altered. The missing accounts my mother copied were stored in a cipher disguised as recipes. I recognized her handwriting in the letters, but the pages listed absurd quantities: 40 pounds of cinnamon for soup, and 700 lemons for 1 cake, 13 cups of salt for coffee. Everyone searched for numerical codes. I remembered how my mother taught me to read a kitchen. Ingredients are people, as she used to say. Amounts are what they cost you. The first letter of each ingredient spelled custodians. The quantities matched locker numbers at the old customs terminal. We reached the terminal with Thomas and 2 elected observers. Uncertain, no evidence belonged only to Roman. The lockers contained ledgers proving Teresa's emergency network had stolen dormant compensation funds and recycled them through shell charities. The final locker was empty. A telephone inside began to ring. Roman answered. Teresa spoke from prison through a smuggled phone. "Your wife saved you once because men mistook her softness for ignorance," she said. "This time I have taught them to mistake her ambition for greed." News alerts appeared before she finished. A fabricated transfer showed $10 million moving into an account under my maiden name. I felt a moment of vertigo when I saw the exact spelling, birth date, and signature. Roman did not ask whether I had taken the money. He asked what detail offended me. The signature, I said. It is accurate. Why is that offensive? Because I have not signed my maiden name in 6 years, but the bank form is dated last month. Whoever forged it had copied an old signature without understanding the date. This had to be one of my mother's letters, or my employment file from the diner. Only 4 people had accessed both. Roman, my sister Lucia, the restitution auditor, and Father Lucian, and went still at the priest's name. Father Lucian had survived the Opera House attack, testified against Teresa, and blessed our marriage. He had also disappeared that morning. Found him in the basement chapel beneath St. Agnes, tied to a chair beside the real auditor, while a man wearing Lucian's coat prepared to set the archive on fire. The impostor was Mr. Bellini's supposed nephew, a customs officer named Paolo, who had spent 20 years inside Teresa network. He fired at Roman. I pulled the old brass locker key from my pocket and struck the emergency pipe valve beside the door, and flooded the basement, triggering the sprinklers and blinding Paolo long enough for Roman to disarm him. Paolo laughed, even after Thomas restrained him. The evidence is already ash. The archive shelves were burning, but my mother had anticipated fire. Every recipe letter was written on heat-reactive accounting paper. Water darkened the blank margins and revealed routing numbers, passwords, and the names of every custodian. The thing Paolo believed would destroy the evidence completed it. We carried the wet pages into the church courtyard as reporters arrived. Roman could have ordered the cameras away. Instead, he stood before them and admitted which signatures were truly his. He named the businesses he had once coerced and announced that his remaining personal fortune would guarantee the frozen restitution payments until the court released the trust. Purchase forgiveness, he said. It prevents my enemies from charging innocent people interest on my shame. Then he stepped aside and let me explain the forged account. I brought payroll records proving I was working during the alleged signing. The real auditor authenticated the altered transfers. Father Lucian identified Paolo by evening. The arrests against the council members were withdrawn. Teresa's emergency network collapsed over the following month. Not because Roman killed its members, but because shopkeepers died. Clerks, drivers, and church volunteers compared records faster than the conspirators could replace them. The final hearing was held in the same hall where assassins once decided who deserved to stand. Appeared by video and called me a waitress who had confused applause with authority. I answered, authority is exactly what I refused. Accountability is what you could never survive. She received an additional sentence for conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder. Paolo received one too. The community trust recovered every stolen dollar. Roman sold the fortified house and used his share to create an archive where any citizen could inspect council contracts without permission from a family name. We kept the apartment above the restaurant. On Thursday mornings, I placed 1 boiled egg at the corner booth for Angelo Bellini, though we never learned whether he died or disappeared to safety. One rainy morning, a polished coin appeared beside the plate. I examined the room, but I closed his hand around the coin. If he wants to remain a ghost, let him. Roman smiled. You give orders like a queen. No queens expect obedience. Expect questions, substitutions, and someone complaining about the bill. Years later, young couples still asked us to tell the story of the assassin who bowed to me. Expected romance. A ruthless boss, a pretend wife, and a gesture that revealed secret nobility. I told them the bow was never the important part. A dangerous man bowed because he recognized a bloodline. It was the old world. The new world began when I asked him to stand, state his name, and answer for what he had done. Roman and I did not save the city by pretending to be husband and wife. We saved each other when we stopped pretending love could excuse power. Our marriage endured because neither of us bowed at home, and because the table between us always had room for the truth. Even when the truth arrived hungry, frightened, and carrying a bill from the past.